For decades, the conflict between Iran and Israel was a clandestine shadow war. It was a high-stakes chess match played out with covert operations, cyber attacks, and proxy forces across the Middle East. But behind the scenes, a more dangerous game was escalating: the race to the nuclear threshold. This long-simmering rivalry finally boiled over on June 13th, 2025, when that shadow war exploded into a direct military confrontation that shocked the world. The immediate trigger was a UN resolution from the International Atomic Energy Agency, which for the first time in years formally declared that Iran was not in compliance with its nuclear obligations. For Israel, this was the final piece of evidence it needed. With Iran enriching uranium to near weapons-grade levels, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the country's military leadership felt time was running out. They believed the only option left was a preemptive strike to cripple Iran's nuclear program and remove what they considered an existential threat to the nation. This was a direct, full-scale military attack that forever changed the dynamics of the region. A conflict like this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's built on a complex foundation of legal and political tension. To understand the why, we need to look at the law that was designed to prevent nuclear war. The legal backbone of global nonproliferation is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT. This landmark international agreement, ratified by almost every nation on Earth, was created to achieve three goals: to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, to promote peaceful nuclear energy, and to work towards total nuclear disarmament. As a signatory, Iran was legally bound by its terms, but for years it had been repeatedly found in violation of its obligations. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, documented Iran's refusal to grant access to sites, its failure to explain the presence of uranium particles, and its continued enrichment of uranium to levels far beyond what is needed for a civilian nuclear program. For many, this was proof that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon. But the situation was even more complicated. Israel is not a signatory to the NPT. It has maintained a policy of nuclear opacity, neither confirming nor denying the existence of its nuclear weapons. This policy, which has been largely tolerated by the international community for decades, gave Israel a unique and controversial position. It could maintain a nuclear deterrent while having no legal obligation to submit to international inspections or disarmament efforts. In the build-up to the war, these two opposing positions on the law, Iran's defiance and Israel's opacity, created an explosive and unresolvable political standoff. In the early hours of June 13th, Israel launched a series of high-stakes, preemptive strikes on Iranian soil. Using a combination of air and ground forces, the Israeli military targeted key command and control centers, nuclear facilities, and key personnel. The initial strikes reportedly killed top military figures, including IRGC head Hossein Salami and several prominent nuclear scientists. The goal was simple: to cripple Iran's ability to wage a counterattack and to set back its nuclear ambitions by years. But Iran had prepared for this very moment. Iran's response was swift and unprecedented. Within hours, it launched a massive first wave of over 100 ballistic missiles and 100 drones towards Israel. While Israel's air defense, including the Iron Dome, successfully intercepted the vast majority of these projectiles, the sheer scale of the attack was a significant test. For a full debrief on the technology behind this remarkable system, be sure to check out our video on the Iron Dome. The initial salvos were followed by a relentless exchange of fire over the next several days. Iran used its most advanced ballistic missiles, including the AMAD, Ghadr, and the hypersonic Fateh-2, which proved difficult for Israeli defenses to intercept due to its maneuverable glide vehicle. The targets were both military and civilian, with several missiles reportedly getting through Israeli defenses to cause significant damage to cities. In return, Israel used airstrikes and special operations to take out mobile missile launchers and other strategic assets. The turning point came on June 22nd. In a coordinated strike with Israel, the United States launched what it called Operation Midnight Hammer. The operation involved a strike package of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers that flew for over 18 hours to drop their payload of GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator bunker buster bombs on Iran's most heavily fortified nuclear facilities, including those buried deep underground at Natanz and Fordo. This operation was a game-changer that escalated the conflict and showed the U.S. commitment to preventing a nuclear Iran. Final retaliation and ceasefire. With its core nuclear facilities destroyed, Iran's military response diminished, but not before one final act of defiance. On the final day of the war, a missile strike hit a U.S. base in Qatar, which was seen as a final warning. But with its nuclear program set back by months, Iran was forced to accept a ceasefire. After 12 days of intense conflict, the war was over, but the world had been forever changed. After 12 days of unprecedented military action, a ceasefire brokered by Egypt was announced on June 24th. Both sides immediately claimed victory, but the toll was grim. In Israel, the conflict left at least 29 people dead, with several thousand injured. But the human cost was far greater in Iran, with the Ministry of Health reporting over 1,000 dead and thousands more injured. The fighting also created tens of thousands of displaced civilians, many of whom were left homeless. While the physical damage was significant, the geopolitical fallout was arguably more profound. For the first time, Iran and Israel had engaged in a direct, open military conflict, forever changing the rules of the game in the Middle East. The conflict exposed the limits of both nations' military might and their dependence on external allies. For Israel, the war proved its intelligence and air supremacy, but also showed its vulnerability to a large-scale missile barrage. For Iran, the war proved that its long-standing proxy forces were no match for a direct military strike. Ultimately, the 12-day war redefined the strategic landscape of the Middle East, setting a new and dangerous precedent for how nations will seek to enforce their will in a region where the nuclear question remains the ultimate source of tension. That's everything for today's debrief. If you enjoyed this week's episode, like, share, and subscribe. And even drop your thoughts on the 12-day war in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. For the latest updates, follow us on social media, where we deliver unbiased, simplified UK defense and geopolitical news for everyone.